So when the opportunity came to present to you somebody that I admire as a leader who's also the first woman president at Gustavus, how does it get any better than that? When I did the interview with Becky to introduce her to you both as in the blog and today, what struck me was this amazing character of someone who was used to being the first woman. Her dad is a Lutheran pastor, and he encouraged her to do extraordinary things, including go off to Princeton, and from there all sorts of things happened where she most of the time was the first woman. So when Gustavus called, she wasn't expecting the call. She recognized it as an opportunity to be the first woman president of Gustavus Adolphus College. I'm grateful and happy to introduce you to Becky Bergman. Welcome. Enjoy yourself.
Well, good morning, and thank you so much for this opportunity to speak to all of you about good leadership. And it's a passion of mine, too, so Paul and I definitely share that. Although I must say, and I've told a few of you this morning, note to self, even though it's months and months ahead, do not accept speaking engagements in September ever again when you're a college president, because it's a rather busy month. So bear with me. Lots been going on at Gustavus, and it's really a thrill to be part of that. But let me go back and tell you a little bit of what was my journey to get to where I am right now. So I'm an Eastern Pennsylvania girl. Grew up there. Paul mentioned my father is a Lutheran minister. So I grew up in the front pew of church with my mother and my sister. My mom is a homemaker and a full-time volunteer in the community. And I did spend most of my youth in church because we were in a small town, and practically all of the community events happened in church as well. So from there, I ended up at Princeton. My dad, being the Lutheran pastor, took me to several Lutheran colleges, including one in our hometown where he was a trustee. And I wanted to be an engineer, and most of the Lutheran colleges were liberal arts colleges, and engineering was my calling. And that happened because of another little event. My optometrist, of all people, one day said to me, "Have you heard of this new profession called biomedical engineering?" And I said, "No," but I didn't speak much to adults at that point. I was very young. And he told me that this is the most exciting new thing he had heard about in a long time. And I went home and read about it and decided I was going to be a biomedical engineer. I love science and I love math. And I ended up at Princeton. I was there very early in the time that women had been accepted to Princeton. And it was an interesting time because a lot of the alumni were not in favor of women coming to Princeton. It was, in fact, quite obvious that the alumni, the older they got, the less they were in favor of women at Princeton. And I had there were 6 of us in chemical engineering. It was less than 1/10 of my class there. And I did not have a single female professor in my entire college career. I'm happy to say that's not true today, but it was very true then. What was interesting is that I never thought twice about whether it was right for me. And we were blazing new ground at the time, both women in engineering and biomedical engineering as a new discipline. Graduated from Princeton. I happened to meet my husband there. He's from Duluth, Minnesota. And you would be so surprised to hear that we moved to Minnesota. Because all good Minnesotans come back, even if they do happen to go away for college. I think before that he had never been past Iowa, but we did meet there, and he got into medical school back here at the University of Minnesota, and we moved to Minnesota and we stayed. We have raised 4 beautiful children, 2 of whom are Gusties, which I'm pleased to say. 2 of whom had minds of their own, and in spite of some influence, they chose other careers. So, after coming to Minnesota, I had the great fortune of an opportunity to work with Medtronic. And Medtronic at the time was about less than $1 billion company. And you could look it up today, it's a little bigger than that. So here I was, young woman engineer, in a place that had a sea of men, most of whom were electrical engineers or mechanical engineers. I was a chemical engineer with biomedical engineering interest. So on goes my career. And I have to say that at this point, biomedical engineering was on a rocket rise. It was a fantastic career at Medtronic, 26 years there, and I am so grateful for those opportunities. I had wonderful mentors, I had great opportunities, and I spent a good chunk of that career as a corporate executive involved with strategic planning, involved with the leading edge of biomedical research, involved with academic advising across the US, because we were invited into those conversations in order to help blend technology with biology. So I had tremendous opportunities at Medtronic. Then my oldest son got old enough for college, and he decided to go to Gustavus. And this little inside Lutheran part of me said, hip, hip, hooray. My dad was on cloud 9, and in fact, he was not thinking that it was a Lutheran school. In fact, he wanted to major in physics. Physics happens to be one of those disciplines at Gustavus that is really world class. He also is a musician, and Gustavus happens to be pretty good at that too. So that was my introduction to Gustavus, and by the time he graduated, I had an invitation to join the board of trustees. Wow, I'm not a Gustie, but I said yes. And saying yes is one of those generous things that good leaders do. And sometimes it's one of my faults, because saying yes is pretty easy for me. So it was 2007 I joined the board. Fast forward, in 2013, I had a phone call from search consultant. At that time, we were starting the search for a new president. And the search consultant set up an appointment phone call with me, and I assumed he was going to ask us, what do we need in our next president? Like any good consultant would do, and work their way around the board members. So I'm all prepared. I had my long list. And instead he said, would you put your name in the hat? I said, well, that wasn't the question I was expecting you to ask. And he said, well, just think about it. Well, that was probably the most difficult discernment on a decision that I had ever done. I was happy at Medtronic. I was challenged at Medtronic. I love the people at Medtronic. I love the mission of that company. And then over here is Gustavus. It's a place that gets in your heart. And there was a long list of positives that I thought, well, could I do that? Is it possible? How in the world could I say yes to that? And there was one evening, I was having dinner with my Gustie son and my daughter-in-law, and this was the first time I had shared with any of the children that this decision was going through my head, because I didn't really want it to leak back to Medtronic. And we're talking about it, and at one point, my daughter-in-law asked me a question that flipped everything for me. because I was debating how could I say yes. And she said to me, could you say no? Whew. Well, the next day I called the search consultant. I said, okay, I'll put my name in the hat. And the rest is now history. I started at Gustavus now 14 months ago, my second year. We welcomed students about 2 weeks ago back to campus, and we are off and rolling on a great academic year. And that is just so exciting. So we served 2,400 students. So those are now my kids. It's a big family. And I'm really loving it. It's truly a wonderful place to be. And I think about why. And the honest answer is that for me, decisions center around a few key fundamentals. One is where their mission is. And I came from a place like Medtronic, where the mission was first and foremost how we thought about our jobs. At Medtronic, the customer was the patient. The mission was about the patient. And all of us worked very hard in the Medtronic way to alleviate pain, restore health, and extend life. At Gustavus, our customer, our product, is our students. We send them out into the world to do good things. And so the mission is about preparing them for fulfilling lives of leadership and service. And what could be better than that? So that compelling feeling deep inside that you resonate with the mission, I think that was, for me, the number one thing. And the second is that the values feel right. The values are in your core, so that your alignment to the mission through the values is one that you can stand on firmly, one that's authentic for you as a leader. So, we are now helping young people, the next generation of leaders, to become good leaders, to become good people, to start to understand what values are at their core, how they can articulate those, and how they can use that to discover their passion, their place in the world, and how they can go out and make a difference. And so it goes full circle, which is what is so amazing about an opportunity to be involved in higher education. And I can't imagine a better place for me to write that next chapter of my life. I think about living generously. I happen to speak from the pulpit at the Gustavus Chapel. Oh, and this must be about 1 week ago. Feels like I've been in front of numerous people for the last couple weeks, and that was a great experience. It always is. One that puts a little fear in my heart because I feel my dad over my shoulder. But the text was the Good Samaritan. And that's one, of course, we all know that story of a man beaten and lying on the side of the road, and the good church leaders walked by, and the Samaritan had compassion in his heart and stopped and helped the man in need. And the question that really comes out of all that is a question to ask yourself of how are you a good neighbor? The man had asked Jesus, who is my neighbor? Wanting to know, who is it exactly that you're telling me I have to love? But the real question is, who am I being a neighbor to? How can I act as a good neighbor? how can I be the Good Samaritan? And so that's a lesson in generosity. That encourages us to see the need in others and act on it. And this is what I hope we all do. We all need to model that for our young people, because it's so important for them to understand the value of giving. We also talked a little bit about, you did, Paul, about the difference between abundance, a mindset of abundance and a mindset of scarcity. And it takes me back to my commencement speech, from my first commencement speech, which was another little scary moment. I can tell you, 600 and some students out there expecting you to say something profound, right? And then you thinking they actually might remember it, which is a whole nother problem. So I asked those students to think carefully about 3 important ideas that they could carry with them when they leave Gustavus. Number 1 was to think in the world of possibility. Possibility. It's a word of abundance. It's a word that takes you to innovation, to creativity. It forces you outside the box. And if you're a possibility thinker, you avoid the status quo, you avoid the feelings of scarcity, and you move yourself and an organization forward. So always think in the world of possibility. The second idea I told them to embrace was to approach life with a fundamental belief in the value of service. If we serve others, we are the Good Samaritan. If we serve others, it takes us into that heart full of generosity. And I believe in that. I think it's important for all of us to live in that world of service and have that point of view. In Lutheran higher education, we talk about serving the common good. That it helps us as we think about vocation, which goes beyond job. Vocation is that calling that comes from deep inside. And it goes back to that value of service. And the third thing I asked the students to really place inside of them and keep it close is to always, 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 always do the right thing. This is a matter of integrity, of course, which is a pretty powerful word. But to ask the students to always do the right thing from the time you wake up in the morning until the time you go to bed at night, and then ask God to help you again to the next day to always do the right thing for yourself and for others. So those go together for me. And as I worked on that commencement speech, I realized that what I was telling the students was my own philosophies of life and leadership. And of course, when it comes from your own heart, that's the best way to convey a concept to others. And so I leave you with those 3 as something to remember, something to think about as you bring that good leader part of you out from deep inside and act on it every day. And I thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Becky. Thank you so much. I'm going to get the opportunity to ask you about a couple things I heard when we do our interview, but now is your chance to discuss something. And I was fascinated by the how can you say no, or can you say no? Because it implied that you said yes to something that really changed your life and brought you here. So let's go back to that decision. What decision that have you made in your life where you said yes that really made a difference to who you are as a leader today? What decision where you said yes made a huge difference in who you are as a leader today? Ready, set, go. Thank you for participating in the round table. We hope you got to know each other a little bit better and you had some of those aha moments when you decided to say yes. I have a few questions for Becky to go a little deeper into her message. The first thing I'm going to say is you are a busy person. What do you do for fun?
Well, right now, well, let me back up a minute. Both of my parents grew up on farms, and so hard work was pretty much built into us from the time we could walk. And so work is life in me and my sister because of that upbringing. Farm families do that. In fact, my dad's favorite phrase is "make hay while the sun shines" because of all, that. So for fun, I have 4 children, as you heard, and if we can have some family time, no matter what we do, that's fun. And when I have some alone time, I have a grand piano in the president's house at the college, which is fantastic for me for a little bit of fun. And I'm doing more commuting because my other house is in North Oaks, which is the total wrong side of the Twin Cities, to go to Gustavus. But that gives me car time for books on tape. So that's my other sort of fun downtime.
We have to talk about this family thing. I think I heard you say that your husband is a neurosurgeon, and you were in an executive leadership role at Medtronic, and you had 4 kids together. How? I mean, how did you make that work? How did you make that work?
That fun thing that was pretty far lower on the list, but luckily kids are fun too.
Yeah.
So we had the wonderful blessing of my husband's aunt, who agreed to be our nanny when second baby was born. And she stayed with us, graduated to be a household manager over time, and is a 3rd adult in our household, a 3rd adult in our children's life who they love very much, and she loves them. So this is the blessing that we had. But that doesn't really take away from what parents have to do. And there were years where we had the big calendar in the kitchen with big squares and small writing on who had to be where by what time in order to do the right things with our kids. And then you add the neurosurgeon in that equation, so you have plan A in case he's able to be there, and plan B if he's got an emergency in the operating room. So every night we have plan A and plan B standing at the calendar.
Kind of makes my life seem really easy right now. Probably the most obvious thing about your leadership is you were in this famous, very successful, publicly held corporation, doing extremely cutting-edge work. And then you make a transition to a faith-based, nonprofit college. How are they similar and different?
The interesting thing to me as I experienced that change was how long the similar list started to become over the course of the year. I mentioned that these are 2 mission-driven organizations, so we don't need to talk about that again. And the reality is that leadership is leadership no matter where you are. The organization changes, the challenges change a little bit, but people are people, no matter where you are. Budgets are budgets, no matter where you are. And of course, there's never quite enough money to go around, so you have to work on that. And what the difference is, there's 2 that I would say. Number 1 is my world got so much bigger. Medical technology, as much as I loved it, and as big as that is in healthcare, all of a sudden I'm meeting alumni who do a zillion other things. And I get a chance to experience that with our alumni, which is great fun. So that's a big difference. Suddenly my peripheral vision just got much bigger. And then secondly, the governance in academics is a little bit different than in the corporate world. There is a hierarchy in corporate that actually works. In academics, the concept of shared governance, which is actually quite wonderful, does mean that the emphasis on process and on working across the constituency in order to move anything ahead sometimes feels like it slows us down, but other times it feels like you've really got buy-in from everyone by the time you're actually hit the green light. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That was very insightful. The other obvious question, you're sitting next to Gary at the table. Gary has triplets who are 14, and he's working on figuring out how to afford college. I've put 3 kids at Gustavus. Anna is a sophomore. It's expensive. I believe in my heart it's worth it. I think it's worth it. What do you hope Anna learns that we know will make it worth it?
Well, now you're touching on the question of what we hope our children get out of higher education. And I'm at Gustavus, and so we really have bought into the whole liberal arts philosophy. So the approach there is that not only are you helping students to discern their passion and their decisions related to a career, when you think about a job, but we try to prepare them for not only the first job, but the second, the third, the fifth, and in today's world they say students might have 7 careers. And so what do you need for that? You need the ability to think broadly. You need to be exposed to disciplines beyond your own. You need to be able to think critically. You need to be able to assemble your thoughts across disciplines. You need to be able to communicate. And so we're hoping that we're preparing students in a way that it's for life. And I think our students do pretty well at that. And I hope Anna does too.
I hope so too. Final question. 26 years at Medtronic. That's a career for most people.
Yeah.
You were there during the most explosive growth years of the organization. I'm thinking now, I'm hoping you feel young, because the college president job is becoming quite stressful. You and I were discussing in the last 20 years, the tenure's gone from 15 down to 6 years for college presidents. I'm wondering, how long do you think you're going to be in it? And maybe what do you want to accomplish in your next chapter?
So let's tackle that last, how long will I be in it? So I do have a boss. It's called the chair of the board of trustees. I serve at their pleasure.
Okay.
So that's a year-to-year thing,
okay,
right? So,
okay, yeah.
You know, the pressure's on. You got to do good stuff. But the opportunity to have a chapter and live amongst 2,400 18 to 22-year-olds. Wow, I mean, that does kind of keep you young. The neat thing about students, they haven't changed, really. And students are idealistic. They're searching. They believe they're going to change the world, and by golly, some of them really will, in small ways and in big ways. So that does keep you young. You'll all laugh at this. My day yesterday, I spent 5 hours shooting videotapes of groups of students and professors and employees dancing with the college president. Now, you don't get to do that when you're in corporate America.
Yeah,
So, you know, the fun factor, it actually does kind of weave through, and it does keep you young.
I'm so glad you came and joined us today.
Paul, thank you so much.
Now it's time for our favorite ritual. Teresa Daly and Paul Hillen are bringing the bucket of goodwill here. And as they do that, I just want to say this is a gift that we're giving to you, Becky, on behalf of our coffee sponsor today and all the people here at the Good Leadership Breakfast. There's an honorarium there that we will direct to your favorite charity. So will you please tell us where you want that money to go?
So one of the things my family supports and has for a long time is an organization called College Possible. And this is an organization that helps students who are typically from economically disadvantaged high school and background to be able to successfully go to college and achieve success in college. So, College Possible.
Outstanding. Thank you.
Thank you.